reading. Well, we have step 10 tonight. We've got Karl M from Covina, California, and I've heard Karl a couple of times. One at the Jersey Shore Roundup, couple CDs. I've always gotten a great message. Learned a lot listening to his experience, strength, and hope. So glad he was able to come here tonight and share some more with us and relate it to step 10. So I'm going to turn our meeting over to Karl. So Karl, thanks so much for coming, and meeting's yours.
Thank you, Steve. My name's Karl. I'm an alcoholic. It's a pleasure to be here. I actually didn't get a chance to meditate with you guys. I feel cheated because my phone is dinging away about people who also had the wrong passcode and somehow started asking me about it. And I'm going, Jesus. They found my number somewhere. So like 3 different strange numbers came across. Anyway, I'm grateful to be here. And I'm a little wound up. I was at my daughter's soccer game. She's the varsity goalkeeper for the high school, and I left a little bit early. It was 3-2. We were winning, so my phone is going to be dinging with that also. I try to do a few things at once. So anyway, I'm gonna get around to talking about step 10 because that really, the book asks us, and there's a reason why they ask us that our story disclosed in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. And there's a reason they give us that guidance. I don't think they were kidding about it. I don't think that they were saying, well, just for a couple of years here, you follow that. But then later, when you get smarter, you just simply talk about, you forget about the basics of AA and you go into this other thing where we get more intelligent AA, right? That's not what they meant. There's a real reason why an AA meeting should be centered around identification, the talk of what on earth happened to turn the ship around in such a dramatic way. Otherwise, we'd be forgetting about the brand new person who does not give a darn about step 10, right? They don't even know what it is, right? They haven't even cleaned up enough to understand that they can stop the damage, right? Because that's really I'll throw in a little side. Step 10 really could be worded, now that you've cleaned it all up, don't make a bigger mess. That's really what step 10 is really all about. So, but we'll get into that now, and I'll probably get into reading out of the book because there's some very interesting stuff in the big book in just the 5 paragraphs. It's really it's barely a full page where they talk about step 10 before they rifle us right into 11. And there's some interesting stuff in there. But anyway, first thing I like to do is to do what the book asks and identify as an alcoholic. And I think that's really, really important. Even now, my sobriety date is January 21st, 1987. I arrived at Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 25 years old. Take a quick look. That is a while ago. It was not last week. It was half a lifetime ago. So in my 34 years of sobriety, I still, in order to connect with somebody in a meeting, I need to know that they literally should not be alive. I need to know that nobody should be talking to them, by all means, right? Based upon this horrendous affliction we call alcoholism. And for some reason, once I know that, once I identify with that person, any other differences we got don't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And I need to emphasize the fact that really, if you take away the alcoholism, we actually have a lot of differences. We are very, Alcoholics Anonymous is a huge, wide cross-section of society. It really is. Every single race, creed, color, religion, every type of family background, every type of different viewpoint, every different socio and economic background is all here. In fact, Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, is the only society where you will find the bank president, the bank teller, and the bank robber all right there in the same room. Right? And they're all telling a very different story about what just happened. But you see, if you add alcoholism, it doesn't matter whether you're the bank robber or the bank president. We're the same. We also drink differently than each other. We really do. We have a lot of different stories centered around our drinking because although we might all be alcoholic, we drink differently than each other. We really, really do. The way I like to illustrate that is to tell a little story. It's a little bit awkward on Zoom, but imagine you're actually in your normal home group meeting, right? Some big hall, that or a small church basement, wherever the room is. Imagine you're there. And let's imagine we wheeled in a giant cart right into the center of the room with all the kind of booze we all love, right? If you're a top shelf expensive drinker, we got it. We got some Remy Martin, we got Cavassier. If you're an expensive drinker, we got it. If you're a bottom shelf drinker, we got that too. Mad Dog 2020. And Nancy, you don't look like you would be drinking Mad Dog, but good for you. Good for you. Oh, Howard, you look like you might like it. But anyway, right? There's always a few guys in the back row when I bring that up, they start to salivate, right? One time I got a standing ovation from the back row when I said that. Like, right, yeah, Mad Dog. Anyway, right? So everything we like. And let's say we imagine that our whole group, we all took about 4 or 5 stiff drinks, real drinks. None of that, just a little bit in the bottom of the glass with a bunch of mixer and umbrellas, right? And flowers in it. No. Real drinks. We took 4 or 5 good, stiff, real drinks. We would all be acting very, very differently, right? Over in one corner, we'd have the good time crowd. Ha, 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 drink, 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 party, party. Talk, 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 woohoo, drink, 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 talk, 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 party, party, right? Add a little methamphetamine, we talk a little faster, talk, 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 right? Grind our teeth, but we're having a good time, right? The good time corner, having a good time. Over in another corner, we'd have the sobbers. You know them, they get a little too drunk, you're like, right? Just sobbing away, you know the type. And then over in another corner, we got the fighters, right? Get a little buzz on, they gotta go. Over in the fourth corner there, a whole bunch of us would be naked, right? So I personally would be visiting each one of the other 3 corners, trying to find a couple of friends to come over to the naked corner with me. That's just the way I get when I get too many drinks in, right? So based upon what corner we find ourselves in, our stories are going to be quite different, right? Over in the good time corner, the ha, party, party, talk, talk, they get a lot of DUIs, right? Because they're out there, they got to get to the next bar. Hey, they got to, where's the party, right? Another bar. Hey, after hours, who's picking up the booze? We're going to Fred's house, right? They're out there on the road, right? They get arrested a lot. They will have a lot of DUIs. Over in the crying corner, they don't have DUIs. They don't even leave the darn house, right? They're just at home crying in the closet. They don't get arrested, right? The worst thing they do is they call you at 3 a.m. in the morning. You get those phone calls, like, right? Or God forbid these days, 2 a.m. drunk Facebooking, like, right? You got any guys from your groups that do that? Right? I have no idea, Yeah, can imagine coming to and going, oh man, it's online, right? So our stories are very different based upon which corner we're drinking in, right? Over in the fighting corner, you got court dates, probation, parole, mom, putting up the house for bond, all that, that kind of story. But no matter which corner we're in, there's one thing we would all be doing. We would all be back at that cart for another drink. Right? And that was really important for me to understand when I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous, when they said, try to identify with the feelings, look for the similarities, not the differences. The differences are glaring if that's what you look at. Where did you grow up? How old are you? Man, woman? What's your sexual orientation? What's your education level? Did you come from an alcoholic family or not an alcoholic? Man, the differences are glaring. What did you do while drinking? You get arrested a lot? Well, maybe I did, but maybe the other person I didn't. Did you lose stuff, or were you somebody who never had anything? Right? I was one of those, when I got here in 87, there was a lot of stories about people who, this is the way I sense it. They seemed to have a life. They got married, they got careers, and then alcohol took it all away from them. And I sat there at 25 years old going, how did you even do that in the first place? Right? What are you talking about? A career and a family to be taken away from? I never had any of that. Right? And so the differences can be glaring, but when I really listen to what alcohol does for you, to you, and what I'm willing to do to get the next drink, I'm you, you're me. Look, I'm going to summarize my teenage years real quick. I was a really good kid. I was born in Helena, Montana. My family moved all his kids when I was 4 years old to the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. My father was a missionary there, and my mother was working for the British government school, the Oxford School district. So we come back to the States, to Seattle in 1970. I'm 9 years old. I take a drink at 11. Everything about my life changed. Prior to that, I loved my family. I'm doing well in school. I was fascinated by life. I take a drink at no sports are left, no school. My hair is I'm growing my hair down onto my shoulders in front of my bloodshot eyes. And my vocabulary by the time I'm 14 is, hey, man, whoa. I'd call my mother, man, hey, man, right? And, I'm the kind of teenage kids where the family would I might come home completely wasted, and there they are, brothers, sisters, mom, dad, neighbor parents. They're having a meeting about what are we going to do about Karl now, right? They should have just had a big sign on the wall. Another, what are we going to do about Karl meeting? Everything goes really ugly when I'm about 23, and I join the Navy. What I'm about to tell you should concern you if you care anything about the security of the United States. But on my way into the Navy, I passed a potential test that qualified me to become a nuclear engineer. That should concern you, that the United States Navy would have any type of system in place that even maybe possibly or even remotely would allow somebody like me near anything nuclear. However, they made me take another test when I showed up at that base for boot camp, and I could not pass that particular test. That test is called a urinalysis test. That's what that one is called. I never knew how to study for those. Should have been kicked out of the Navy. Series of events, family contacts. My father was both active and reserve in the United States Navy for 40 years. He was the highest ranking chaplain in the Pacific Northwest. He had already retired, but so family contacts, that's really what it was, family privilege that allowed me to stay in the Navy. Technically, I should have been booted right out on the street with what had happened there. And a number of things happened that really shouldn't have, that allowed me to finally. So I got to tell you, there's a brief period of time there. So they take away that nuclear school. They send me out to the fleet. I'm out in the Pacific Ocean. I'm on a Spruance class destroyer. Those are specifically designed to hunt Russian submarines. And that's what we're doing in the early 80s, is we're out hunting Russian submarines, right? That's what we did. And it's kind of like out of a Tom Clancy novel. And I got to tell you, I started to feel some of the things that a young man is supposed to feel when he starts to experience what life is really about. I started to understand what commitment meant. I started to understand what it meant to the camaraderie of the military, what it meant to be responsible to your fellows. I started to learn quite a bit while I was in the Navy. I did well when the ship was out at sea. However, I am alcoholic. And, alcoholism sort of figuratively could look at a young man like me thinking he's getting a little bit ahead in life. And it just sort of, I'm sure it just sort of chuckles and thinks, oh, look at this young guy, not going to address his alcoholism. And he thinks he's going to move forward in life. I can take the love a mother has for her children. You don't think I can take this away from that young man? And, like I said, I did well when the ship was out at sea, but that ship would pull into a port and I'd take a drink. And I'd had this, what I'm about to describe, I've had this since I'd been a teenager, that once I take a drink, all bets are off. I would only need to just have a couple of beers with the guys, maybe have a couple of shots of Jack Daniels, woohoo, right? But I trigger off what the book calls the phenomenon of craving. This unquenchable thirst happens. The best way I can describe this thing that the book calls the phenomenon of craving in my life is that it seems like whenever I drink booze, the more booze I drink, the thirstier I get. It happens with nothing else in my life that I drink. An example of that, I've got this bottle of water. And over the next 40 minutes or so that I'm talking with you, I'll probably drink about half this bottle. I might finish it. Or I'll finish it later this evening. But I can absolutely swear to you that once I finish that bottle of water, I am not going to go buy a case of water and lock myself in a little motel room. Right? Not going to happen. And so when I would leave that ship and I would take a drink, I would trigger off these 3 and 4 day drunks. Now, I'm not talking about that I'm in 4-day blackout straight, but I literally would drift in and out of consciousness. I literally would be here for an hour and a half. Then I'd be gone for about 3 hours. I would come to for another hour and a half, and I might come to in a cheap motel room and realize I'm late for the ship, and I would just reach for what's left in that bottle on the nightstand, and I would drink that, and it would literally it's like throwing gasoline on the embers of a fire, and bang, the next drunk is off, and I'm going. And I would this often would go for 3 or 4 days at a time. And I got to tell you, when you're on liberty from a ship in the Navy, they're usually only there for a couple of days. And I sometimes would be doing this for 3 or 4 days, and I would come back. I'd find myself at 6 a.m. in a foreign country on a large pier, looking up and down that pier going, there was a destroyer here the other day. Right? The military calls this missing ships movement. It's a big deal. And I've been in the Navy approximately 2 years at this point. I'm already in a lot of trouble, and I came to in a cheap motel room in downtown San Diego. We were in port for a couple of weeks. I started drinking on a Thursday. This was a Monday. I came to in a cheap motel room, and I'm late getting back to the ship again. I got in my car, and my car is, you've heard the story. My car is dying of alcoholism right along with me. It's all beat up and dented and barely held together by a couple of rubber bands and hitting on 2 cylinders. And I'm trying to get back to the ship, and I'm trying to get this half pint in me, and I'm paying more attention to getting that half a pint in me before I get back to the ship than where the ship is going. And I lost control of my car right outside the Navy base and took it right through the front guard shack. A Marine stands duty in these guard shacks. This is pre 9/11. Security was significant, but nothing like it is now. But and our ship was in the yard, so it was a lower security guard shack. But still, this Marine is on duty. You're supposed to slowly and politely pull your vehicle up to this guard shack. You're supposed to show him your military ID. He will check the stickers on your front windshield. If everything's in order, he'll allow you to proceed onto the base. As I said, I was paying more attention to getting this half a pint in me, and I took my car right through that guard shack at 40 miles an hour. I can still see that Marine doing this big dive out of there. He did a quick somersault. He would back up, weapon drawn. Thank God these Marines are in good shape. I am so happy that Marines are in fantastic shape. He was all right. I'm in this big lump of twisted metal and broken glass, and I'm climbing out of the car, and I hate these types of mornings. This isn't the first time I've been in a situation like this, and I hate it. Where everybody's running around and screaming and yelling, and sirens are going off, and people are pointing at me like this is all my fault. Now, I'm still, for the first 2 minutes, a little bit disorientated and don't quite know what actually happened myself. And I'm wondering, is it really my fault? Did I do this? That kind of thing. And I hated those mornings. And it was also one of those mornings, inevitably, I wind up arrested, but I'm slightly injured, so I'm in the hospital. I hated being handcuffed to the bed. God, I hated those mornings. I hate those mornings. And, they're reading new charges on me in the hospital, and this is nothing significant or new charges. That's it. That's just what happens in a guy's life like mine about every 90 days if you're living the way I'm living. But the most significant thing that happened that morning is the Navy doctors prescribed this stuff called antabuse for me. And I was now under orders. Other than the charges I'm facing, I'm now under orders to show up at sick bay every single morning before quarters. And I would have to sit in a chair, and the hospital corpsman would make me stick my tongue out like, I was there with like 3 other guys. We all had to sit there like little monkeys and stick our tongue out, and they'd put this little white pill on each one of our tongues. And we'd have to sit there for a half an hour. They knew, the tricks of put it on your tongue, spit it out later. Oh, sure, doc, I'll take that later. No, you sit there, stick your tongue out. They put it on your tongue. You sit there for a half an hour to make sure it actually gets in your system. Over the next 7 to 10 days, I started to experience the most cunning, baffling, and powerful side of this thing we call alcoholism, and that is that I had no alcohol in my system, and I was literally going insane. See, I'd experienced this quite a few times since I've been a young teenager. There were always, you could call this a window of opportunity for sobriety, right? I'm an alcoholic. I've been forced to go on to antabuse. This could be viewed as a window of opportunity for sobriety. But I'm a firm believer it depends on what happens during that window of opportunity for sobriety as to whether sobriety will be found. Right? Throughout history, alcoholics of our type always had windows of opportunity for sobriety. And it just always, nothing ever would happen. No message would be carried to them. We can't argue alcoholics like us throughout history. Jung talks about it with Roland Hazard when Jung finally figures out that he had misdiagnosed Roland Hazard, right? Imagine that after a family spends money for a year with the world's most renowned, or arguably, next to Freud, the world's most profound psychologist. Just imagine what that bill was with Roland Hazard under the care of Jung for a year, right? And then he gets misdiagnosed after a year. I can imagine. And Jung said, when he says, oops, I misdiagnosed you, Roland, you're a chronic alcoholic. There's no hope for you. I can't do anything for you. Just think about that. In the early 1930s, you send your child to the world's most renowned psychiatrist and psychologist, and after a year, he says, I got no hope for you. And Roland's response was, but is there really no hope? Jung says, well, I've read about and heard about, but I have no idea how to produce this. But I've heard that alcoholics of your type have these dramatic rearrangements of attitudes and ideas towards life where they're able to find sobriety. But I don't know how to create that. I have no idea. So what Jung was saying that indeed throughout history, alcoholics of our type would get sober, right? Like a stray kernel of popcorn, right? You can't, the town drunk in some little village somewhere in Europe or United States or South America, right? In the little village, the town drunk, we'll just call him Otis, right, out of Mayberry for the fun of it, right? Otis would just get sober, right? And the whole town would go, Otis, you're sober, right? And Otis would go, oh, I am. Well, Otis, you got to come help my brother. You got to come help my mother. She's alcoholic too. You drink with her. Come on. Help. And Otis would go, but I have no idea what happened to me. How am I supposed to help? So now Otis is sober, but he's useless, right? And in fact, even more than that, I'm kind of kidding here, but Otis is now a problem for the rest of us alcoholics in town. Because now our families are looking at us and saying, why can't you be like Otis? Right? He got sober. You can too. So I bet you anything, a bunch of these drunks that sort of popped sober one day, in a few weeks that you'd find them floating face down in the river. The other drunks got rid of them because they were a bad example, right? Caused problems. But what I didn't understand there in this last year before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous is that at that time it would have been just for the last 55 years of the history of mankind, there actually was a solution. Something had happened called Alcoholics Anonymous that actually could reproduce what happened to Otis. They unlocked the secret. They learned how to mass produce this rearrangement of attitudes and ideas towards life that could bring about sobriety. For the very first time in history, we could mass produce the spiritual awakening necessary to find sobriety. Kind of like when Henry Ford figured out how to mass produce the automobile so the average person could have an automobile, whereas before only the rich, not only the rich, just you had to be filthy rich to be able to have one of those horseless carriages. And Henry Ford figured out how the common man could have it. And that's what I really believe happened in 1935, is that a stock speculator and a proctologist, my late sponsor Eddie Cochran called that odds and ends, literally unlocked the secret to this thing called a spiritual awakening. If you hear children screaming, my plate, there's a pool right outside there, and it just opened after COVID, so there's a bunch of kids in the pool. Right? It's just literally right outside my front door. It's kind of nice to have the pool right there, but anyway. So, and I can't really, what am I going to do? Run out there and say, I'm on a freaking AA meeting. You guys quit having a good time. Can you imagine? So anyway, So I'm on that antabuse, and I'd had windows of opportunity for sobriety before. When I'm a teenager, I get arrested. I flunk out of college on my parents' money. I get about 10 credits in 3 years when my parents are paying for college. And it's always makes you kind of the star of the family when you do that. Friend overdoses, so you don't drink, you lay low. And that would be a window of opportunity for sobriety also. And like this time, now I'm under the Navy is sending me to a psychiatrist and a chaplain. And this is not the first time I've been regular appointments with psychologists, counselors, well-meaning, highly educated people. And I'm not drinking. And but there's something that I don't understand. It's like this ticking time bomb inside of me. Now, our book calls it, they call it this strange mental blank spot. They call it the mental obsession. It's also combined with this spiritual malady. It's really, really it's the thing that actually makes what I have alcoholism instead of an alcohol problem. If I just get into trouble and lose control of drinking and that's it, well, then stop. I've got an alcohol problem, solve the problem, quit drinking, and all will be fine. But you see, I have alcoholism. And that means that on top of this bizarre, unquenchable thirst I get when I drink, I seem to have even more trouble with sobriety. That when I stop drinking is when I have all the problems. I was never able to do the following. I was never able to be happy and have the people that love or care about me or count on me happy at the same time. I could never get that together. Where people that loved me, cared about me, or counted on me, I couldn't have them happy and me happy at the same time. Because when I'm happy, I've got about 8 drinks in me, right? And looking for more. That's when I'm feeling like a whole person. I love you. All is good. We're good. But everybody that loves me, cares about me, or counts on me is like, no, right? Now, when they're happy is when I'm not drinking and they're all hopeful. Oh, Karl. Oh, good. Yeah. Ha! And I am about ready to explode from the inside out. I can't stand it. And so I'm in this like catch-22. I can't drink successfully. I cannot not drink successfully. And then I'd be put in front of these well-meaning people, highly educated, well-meaning people that honestly want to help me. But they always wanted to talk to me about me and why am I doing these things? Karl, why would you be doing these things? Karl, what's the matter with you? Let's talk about something that obviously you're holding back, that you're trying to escape from. What is it? You need to open up to us, Karl, right? And I don't want to talk to you about me. I don't even know what to say. Now, if I would have had the vocabulary that I have now, the knowledge that you, Alcoholics Anonymous, gave me, I would have said this. I would have said, yes, Mr. or Mrs. highly educated, well-meaning person trying to help me. I would have said, yes, I see why you're shocked. I'm sure you are just dumbfounded at the price I'm willing to pay for another drink. I get it. This must be shocking to you. But I would have followed up with this. But if you knew how I felt when I wasn't drinking, you wouldn't be asking me why I drink. See, there's only one thing worse than the price I pay for my drinking, and that's the way that I feel when I'm not drinking. And I snapped and I went AWOL from my ship after 10 days, locked myself in a little motel room in downtown San Diego, and I had a full load of antabuse on me, and I remember sitting on the edge of this bed, and I had a bottle of vodka and a shot glass. I remember that the Navy doctors had given me a very stern warning about drinking on top of antabuse. They said, son, you need to understand that if you drink on top of antabuse, you'll get one of 2 reactions. One reaction is you will get violently ill. The other reaction is you might die. I remember looking at the bottle and I thought, well, I wonder which reaction I'm going to get. So I took one shot and nothing happened. Authority had lied to me again as far as I was concerned. I waited about 2 minutes just to make sure, and I took another shot. Felt a little tingly in the face, so I looked in this cracked little mirror that was in this hotel room, and I was bright red. blotchy and purple in places. Took another shot. All of a sudden, I could feel my heart going boom, boom, boom. Looked at my shirt. I was drenched in sweat, and all of a sudden, like hyperventilating. We're doing all right so far. Marty, you're very sick if you think this is funny. And Ginny, I see you laughing too. There's something wrong with you. I took another shot, and up it came. My late sponsor, Eddie Cochran, called this next thing that happened to me projectile regurgitation. This is a new level of puking I'm unfamiliar with. Because we all know normal puking, right? We're out there in the middle of a good drunk. We get that warning, right? A little sour taste in the back of our throat. Maybe a little bit comes up in our mouth. And we go, right? And we know, based upon experience, we have 30 to 60 seconds to find a bathroom if there happens to be one. If we're driving, we learned our lesson when we were 17. Get the window down. Don't blow it on the dashboard, right? We're not stupid. We learn our lessons. These are alcoholic tools for living. But here on the Antabuse, there's no warning. It's just sort of this Linda Blair spray across the room. Thank God the Plaza Hotel is the type of hotel room where the toilet is in the same room with the bed. It's a design feature, I believe, maybe to make convicts feel more at home upon release. I'm not really sure. But I found the magic of drinking on top of Antabuse, and that is if you hang in there. That's an important feature if you're going to drink on top of Antabuse. You got to hang in there. You cannot half measure it. In fact, if you're going to drink on top of Antabuse, you might need to reach down deep inside yourself for a level of commitment you might not even know you have. But I found that if I kept drinking and kept puking and kept drinking and kept puking about an hour to an hour and a half, enough of the Antabuse would kick out of my system, and I would quit throwing up, and I would just be left with red face, hyperventilating, and sweating, and I'm all right with that. So I drank on top of Antabuse the last 7 months of my drinking. The only words to describe this are desperation drinking. Second to my last drunk, I was left for dead in a motel parking lot, and a pool of blood came to on an operating table. They had to do reconstructive surgery on my face. My last night of drinking, I'm being let out of the San Diego jail, being transferred from the civilian authorities back to military authorities. And that morning, I was in handcuffs. They were extra tight, and the military police tried to bring me back to my ship, and my ship said wrong answer. The officer deck put his arm up and said wrong answer. Orders have already been processed on this loser. The orders are 90 days in the brig, bad conduct discharge, or treatment. My daughter just won 7-4, by the way. I'm getting text messages. Yeah, that means they're like 1 or 2 games away from going to CIF championships. It's good. Anyway, so where was I? Drinking on top of Antabuse. I'm at the quarterdeck of my ship being rejected, and they said 90 days in the brig, bad conduct discharge, or treatment. And I was not part of the decision-making process here. Because I was in handcuffs, When you're in handcuffs, they don't go, so what's your opinion on what happens next? Right? When you're in handcuffs, you go where they say. They took me up to a military treatment center, and when the doors were locked behind me at that military treatment center, that's when they took the handcuffs off me. And there's no better symbolism of who Carl Morris is without Alcoholics Anonymous than that. The society in which I'm supposed to be living and contributing to, the country I'm supposed to be serving, is only willing to take the handcuffs off me when the doors are locked behind me. That's who I am without you. That's the sum total of my life. And now we've got another window of opportunity for sobriety, but this is where you people come in. I'm in this military treatment center. I don't even really know what it is. I see it as somewhat of a hospital type setting. They're still very, very big on you making your bed and being in a proper uniform. But they're being much nicer, not during the mornings, though. They make us run about 3 miles in the morning with Marines screaming at us, move it. We'd be like vomiting this detox, vomiting on the side of the road. And then they put us into therapy in the afternoon. They go, how do you feel? But you know what? 4 nights a week, they would put us in white vans and take us to you. That's what saved my life. I'm so grateful that Alcoholics Anonymous allows outside agencies to refer potential alcoholics to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. So they're, in January, February, March of 1987, I would be one of those guys in a white van and sit in the back with the other military men and women, and I would we were allowed to watch Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know there's a difference between watching Alcoholics Anonymous and doing Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea that there's a whole lot of work that I got to do. I didn't understand the real nature of surrender to alcoholism. I had no idea what it meant to really go on a spiritual path and turn my will and life over the care of that thing that I'm seeking. I have no idea what it means to do a personal inventory and take a look at where I had been the master of my own destruction my whole life. I had no idea what it really meant to be honest with another person before God. I had no idea what it meant to take a look at what really makes me and drives me from the inside out. What are these character defects that completely control my behavior and make decisions for me when I don't even know it's making decisions? And I have no idea what it really means, and no intention at all of paying back all the money, going in front of people that I had seriously harmed, that I had seriously let down throughout my life, and face the music. I had no idea of that, nor did I understand, once I do all of that in this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, that they're going to ask me to start practicing this as a way of life on a regular basis, to be able to understand and be able to utilize steps 4 through 9 on a regular basis. And that's what they call step 10. It's really just a quick 4 through 9. They literally, it's a looking back on my day. Have I harmed anyone? Do I owe amends? When I really have difficulty, am I going to turn my mind to helping others, or am I going to sit there and beat myself up and get all guilty over this problem, or be perplexed by this problem? I got about 5 major problems going on right now. I really do. And my job is to continue to show up where I'm asked to be shown up. It's really strange. See, of those 5 problems that I could name to you right now, 3 of them are real, 2 of them are not. That's just based upon my experience. I think they're all real right now, but based upon 34 years of sobriety, only 3 of them are real. 2 of them will die of neglect if I quit looking at them. They literally will. They'll disappear if I quit thinking about them. So I've got about 15 minutes. Is that right, Steve? So I found, I'm going to assume that's kind of right. Just nod your head, I think. Yeah. So I found Alcoholics Anonymous through this military treatment center. And everything that Alcoholics Anonymous does with a young man was done to me. The right men were in the right place at the right time to give me the right solution. My first 2 years of sobriety, I was still in the Navy, and I was still on that same ship. And I was kind of a nomad in Alcoholics Anonymous. My first sponsor was another kid on the ship. When I say kid, I was 25 years old. He was 23 years old. He had 16 more months of sobriety. He was my first sponsor. It was him and I and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? And when the ship would pull into a port, wherever we were in the world, we would go to a phone booth, or we might have written a letter previously to New York and gotten a letter back ahead of time that we were going to be in this country. Where might the meetings be? And we'd have to go on this major hunt. And I got to tell you, that some of my favorite memories was the hunt for the meeting, trying to just get to the meeting. I'm just going to throw this in here. Sometimes through social media and texting, I get these text messages. Hey, I've got this sponsee of mine with 4 years who's moving to Dallas, Texas. We need to hook them up with some people. I send back, no, we don't. Let them go find it themselves. Let them find where they're supposed to be. Do some work, tell them to do some work themselves. Why do we have to baby these people? We don't need to. Some of my most valuable times were hunting for the meeting, going to meetings and saying, well, I didn't really like that one, but boy, did I like that one. Anyway, so right there on page 84, I'm just gonna do a little couple of paragraphs out of the book on step 10. Right there on page 84, it says, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. Basically, they're saying, look, you just got through making a huge amount of amends, and you're probably not even done with the mountain of crap to clean up. Let's not make it any worse. Continue to set straight. I'm sure most of you heard the saying that we go through life. That when I got sober, the story was a station wagon. Now we got to use an SUV. Going through life in a SUV, and we're just throwing all our problems behind us, and we get sober, we slam on the brakes, and they're all comes piling into the front seat with us. And Alcoholics Anonymous says, okay, we'll start addressing that one thing at a time, and we will clean all this up. So you're still in the middle of cleaning a lot of that up, and we get to this, where it says, this thought brings us to step 10. I always like to look at the very first couple of words when a new paragraph comes and say, on this one, I'd say, what thought brings us to step 10? Right? It says, this thought brings us to step 10. Well, what thought? Oh, we had just got done reading the promises, right? The promises of step 9, right? Where it had just said, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. Halfway through step 9, we will be amazed. And then all these things start to materialize in our life. And they say, this thought brings us to step 10. Look at that on the next paragraph. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it like a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. I got to tell you, for years, I absolutely took exception to that. What do you mean it has happened automatically? I just went through some of the toughest things I've ever done in my life in facing, going in front of my military superiors and facing charges and admitting to things. I had this little embezzlement thing I had going on with the military while being a drunk. I'm kind of like the guy in padding my expense account and being the town and being the ship drunk. So I had this little embezzlement scam going on. I had to go face up to that. And now they tell me that, and now I literally found, the one way to word it, freedom from the obsession. I had found it by the time I'm 6-9 months, a year sober. Doesn't mean the thought didn't still creep in my mind. I just wasn't subject to believing the lie. That's the miracle. I still had a million problems. All those problems that piled up on me and were astonishingly difficult to solve, I hadn't solved even half of them, but I wasn't prone to drinking. So the miracle had taken place. And I remember when I was feeling really crappy one time at, 90 days sober, man, I still feel horrible. This isn't working. I'm so grateful that somebody knew the book and they brought up Bill's story. And I want to I don't even know why I'm going into this, but this is a really, really good point. Check this out of Bill's story on page 15. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. So he's not working for a year and a half, and I'm complaining at 90 days. I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. Bill is plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment at a year and a half. Think about that. We all believe that Bill had one hell of a spiritual awakening, don't we? There are millions and millions and millions, tens of millions that have gotten sober as a result of his spiritual awakening. That's one hell of a spiritual awakening. But he was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment for a year and a half. So if I'm feeling at 90 days like I'm not feeling wonderful, this isn't working. No, yes, it is. Yes, it is. If I'm struggling with people, places, and things at a year sober, you bet. If I can't really feel like I'm really useful, don't know really who I am, I'm feeling lost, I still feel empty inside. Great. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. It doesn't happen overnight. This is a lifelong thing. But look at this. Plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment, this sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. So Bill was on the verge of drinking for a year and a half, but he didn't. I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Notice that it didn't say, I buckled down and tried harder. I started to look at my inventory again. No, we can do all that, but you may as well just jump to working with another alcoholic, right? So if I'm struggling here, sobriety and not being, maybe I build up more problems in my life, and I'm listening to people in meetings and I'm saying, yeah, I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to find that. And I keep failing. Great. Fine. It does not mean Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work, because I'm failing sober. This is a huge, huge thing that I really didn't quite grasp it. For me to go and fail at life sober is a huge thing, because I did it sober. And it means I get another chance to get back in the batter's box. So now, but they say this, we react sanely and normally in regards to alcohol. No promises in the rest of our lives. You might not react sanely and normally in relationship areas, in job areas, and interacting with family. In fact, you might be flat out insane in that area. But we react sanely and normally in regards to alcohol. And what does that mean? It means when tempted, we recoil. That's a sane reaction. Right? Insane is moving towards it. Sane reaction, based upon my experience, is no, bad idea. But they say it's happened automatically. How could they say that it's happened automatically? I've done all this work. I've been, by the time I started questioning, by the time that statement slapped me across the face, I was like, I've already been to 1,000 meetings. What do you mean it happened automatically? I've done an inventory. I've made a bunch of amends I swore I wouldn't. I've already started payment plans back to the military, back to my family, back to my creditors. I'm barely getting a nickel out of my Navy paycheck because it's all going out. What do you mean this has happened automatically? Finally realized what they meant by that. Because I had stopped fighting alcohol. None of that work that I had done in an inventory and making amends had anything to do with fighting alcohol, right? If the steps were about fighting alcohol, it would have been step 1, kill all your friends that you drink with. Step 2, get rid of all the alcohol in your town. Step 3, become a politician and reenact prohibition. That would be steps of fighting alcohol, right? But none of these steps have anything to do with fighting alcohol. In fact, it's a complete surrender. It's a complete surrender. And we start working on ourselves so that really, when those highly educated, well-meaning people would say, what's the matter with you, Karl? That now, for whatever reason, I'm able to hear from you guys for the first time in my life. And for me to say, what is the matter with me? Now that I'm sober, what is my inner workings and why am I feeling this way sober? What do I do about it? What tools do you have for me, Alcoholics Anonymous, that I can, a day at a time, keep this strange, corrosive thing that seems to eat away at me the longer I don't take a drink? How do I keep that at bay? And how do I actually get a few days, maybe a few weeks of complete freedom from it? Alcoholics Anonymous said back to me, kid, we got just the thing. Follow the directions in the big book. And once you start setting up how you're going to make all of the amends from the past, we're going to teach you how to live a day at a time, where you're going to start not letting the stuff pile up and eat away at you. And that's the essence of step 10. And you know what? While I'm really only supposed to do that in between paying attention to other new people, right? I really want to emphasize that. Alcoholics Anonymous says, yes, work on yourself. But you know what? You don't get much time to do that because you got a commitment. You got to be on that panel. You're supposed to go to that H&I meeting. You got to go greet at the meeting. And you know what? There's 2 new guys that are counting on you to communicate with them each day. And after you're done all do that, go ahead, work on yourself for about 10 minutes. But Karl, we do not work on ourselves really very much. And, you know, my experience has been the more I focus in on working on myself, the more it seems like my life, like I'm trying to hold sand in an open palm. It all seems to just run out. But when I sit there and I spend more time being concerned about your well-being, it seems like God does amazing stuff in my life. Really does. Really does. And so just like I said, I've got 5 main kind of big things that are going on in my life right now. And I promise you, 2 of them will die of neglect. God doesn't even need to worry about them because they're not even real. The 3 that are more than likely real, again, the more I do what I'm supposed to do on a daily basis, a solution for those will strangely appear. Something will happen. One of the problems has to do with my accountant, and he needs to really get on the ball on something. So, and he's not in the program, so I can't call his sponsor and narc on him. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here. I think I've talked a lot. I think in that text, Steve, you said there's a Q&A at the end. I hope I left time for that. Thanks for letting me share, guys.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Carl. We open the meeting for